This week's Parsha is one of the most complicated parashot in the whole Torah. And I know this for a fact because it's my bar mitzvah Parsha. Now there's a silver lining there. It has the easiest Aventura of the whole year. So, you get a Parsha that is difficult to craft a speech with, many rules, many complicated rituals that don't apply to these days, but as a prize for that, you get a very easy Haftorah to learn. I still remember the first time I encountered these texts and I didn't know what to do with the 74 mitzvot that appear in the Torah. 74 mitzvot, only one Parsha. So there are 613 mitzvot in the whole Torah, 70-something, like more than 10% are in this week's Parsha. And there's something that I want to share with you about many of the mitzvot that appear in this week's Parsha. Many of the things that appear in this week's Parsha are civil or criminal law. Now, when it comes to civil or criminal law, you're not talking prayers and Shabbat and Kashrut. You're talking things that if you transgress, you have to go to a court. So, for example, there was a case of a rebellious son, or there's another case that has to do with a claim about someone marrying a woman that she didn't disclose some condition and she wants to sue the family to get the dowry back and circumstances like that. Many of the mitzvot in this week's Parsha require to bring the case to a court of law. Now, who sits in a court of law according to Jewish tradition? Rabbis, right? But the word rabbi doesn't appear in the Torah. Don't tell anyone. But we rabbis are a more modern invention. There are no rabbis in the Torah. So how does the Torah call rabbis or judges or wise people? No, it doesn't call them tzaddik. Tzaddik has to do with a moral virtue. Being a rabbi has to do with acquiring wisdom. The Torah calls them elders. And this is a beautiful thing. A wise person, according to the Jewish tradition, is someone who has experience. Wisdom doesn't come necessarily from reading many books. Wisdom comes from the fact that you have experienced so much in your life that grants you the privilege of distinguishing between right and wrong and presiding in a court of law. The word zaken, which is the word that the Torah uses for the wise man that would sit in a court of law, comes from the Hebrew word zakan. Zakan means beard. Okay, the elders in the Torah were called the bearded ones. Imagine, okay, many thousands of years ago, in a day, before Gillette and before razors and all that, old people looked like Gandalf or Dumbledore, okay? Depending on your age, you will relate to one or the other. But all people had a very long, white beard. So you would know when someone is a wise man because you see the beard. Now, the interesting thing here is that as opposed to the days in which we live in, back in those days, looking old was not something that people would run away from. It was actually an honor. Okay? If I tell someone that I haven't seen in 25 years, oh, you look much older, it's not a compliment. We tend to tell people, oh, you look the same. I haven't seen you in 2 decades and you look exactly the same. Now, in those days, that would have been an insult. Because for people, it was a good thing to look older. I remember my father usually tells the story when he was very, very young. And in the summers, he would go to a city called Mar del Plata with his grandmother, and his grandmother would tell him to put some powder in his hair so that she can take him to the casino. Okay? It was a good thing to look older. Now, we live in an age in which people use all kind of anti-aging products because we don't like to look old. We believe that looking old is not a sign of wisdom, but is a sign that our time has passed. Usually I have arguments when my kids ask me like, Dad, in your days, was this a thing? And I'm like, these are my days. These are still my days. And as long as I I am in this earth. These are going to be my days. So the Jewish tradition, instead of running away from signs of age, venerates the elder. There's a beautiful story that we actually read in the Passover Haggadah. Many of you probably skim through this line and don't realize what the line is trying to tell. But there's a man, a rabbi, whose name was Eleazar ben Azariah. Now, Eleazar ben Azariah was one out of 71 rabbis who sat in the Sanhedrin. The chief of the Sanhedrin was an old rabbi called Rabban Gamliel. One day there was a fight with Rabban Gamliel, and they do an impeachment. Yes, still in those days, they still do that with people. They run an impeachment on Rabban Gamliel, and they decide that Rabban Gamliel is no longer qualified to preside over the Sanhedrin. And they have to choose who's going to preside over the Sanhedrin. And the wisest person that was sitting there was, without a doubt, Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah. So they choose him, but he goes back home sad, with a heavy heart, and he tells his wife, I cannot be the president of the Sanhedrin because I'm too young. I don't have a single gray hair in my head. So according to the Talmud, a miracle happens in that moment, and God dyes his hair, okay? To the contrary to what you do these days, right? In these days, we try to dye our hair so that we don't have any gray hair. In those days, God transformed Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah's hair into something completely white. And only then, he felt comfortable presiding over the Sanhedrin. And that's why the Passover Haggadah says that Rabbi Eleazar ben Azariah says, Harei ani keben shivim shana. I am as if I was 70 years old. Why does he say, as if I was? Because he was not. He was much younger, but he looked older, and that was something worthy of admiration. I believe that there's a lot of wisdom in this idea that old people are not people that need to retire. Okay, what a sad idea that we retire someone, right? We retire a player from the NBA when we don't want that jersey to be worn again. All people are not to be retired. All people are a constant source of inspiration and wisdom. And that's why when the Jews left Egypt and God said, we're going to leave, tell Pharaoh that we are leaving, and Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, we are leaving, and Pharaoh says, fine, take the adults, but leave the rest. Moshe says, Bena'areinu ubizkeineinu neilech. We are leaving with the youth and also with the elders. Moshe could have said, we'll leave the elder behind. What do we need the elders for? Okay, in a journey of 40 years through the desert, what's the point of taking people that are going to slow down the pace of the journey? The point is, without elders, there's no wisdom. And I'm saying all of this because the elders are a key element of this week's Parsha, but also because this congregation, as a family, as an extended family that we are, is celebrating today. Actually, the birthday is tomorrow, but we're celebrating tonight the birthday of Ibi Schneider. And Ibi turns 100 years old tomorrow. And we believe that being an elder is something that people should be very proud of. And we believe that as a congregation, if we want to have a future, yes, definitely we need children, but we also need to be a congregation that listens to the voice of the elder. Just try to picture the world in which he was born. I mean, Ibi was born in a world in which people, the wealthy ones, would drive a Ford Model T. And she leaves every Friday the synagogue with the Sharifkar family in a Tesla Model Y. That's Ibi, okay? That's her life. She was a witness to the Holocaust, to the establishment of the State of Israel, to the Cold War, to so many changes in terms of health, in terms of technology. She lived in so many countries, and in every place that she lived, she learned, she took the wisdom with her, she left the mark, and she shared her wisdom with the younger generations. So, Ibi, this Dvar Torah is dedicated to you. We are privileged to have you here. We love you. I'm going to share just an anecdote that I love about Ibi. I have many anecdotes. Some I cannot share from the bima. But last Sukkot, we were all eating in the sukkah, and I go to a restroom, and I see Ibi sitting there in the back of the scene alone. And I said, like, Ibi, what's going on? Is everything all right? And she says, yes, but it's about to start raining, and I just did my hair yesterday. That's Ibi, 100-year young, definitely 100-year young. And Ibi, come, I have a present for you. I have something for you.